What if the safest place on Earth has quietly become one of the most dangerous? For more than 30 years, military planners around the world believed one simple idea. If you could build deep enough, no bomb could reach you. That belief shaped mountains. It carved tunnels beneath deserts. It buried command centers beneath reinforced concrete and solid granite. But then the internet filled with footage from central Iran. A dull flash. Almost no towering fireball. No collapsing skyscrapers. No dramatic shockwave rolling across the landscape. Instead, the earth seemed to breathe. A deep contained detonation. Seconds later, explosions rippled upward from somewhere no camera could see. The surface barely changed. Everything underneath did. The question wasn't whether something had exploded. The question was why it looked so different. Because this wasn't simply another airstrike. It was a challenge to an entire military philosophy. And at the center of that story is the Faye-Buffet massive ordnance penetrator. Faye, not because it is America's largest conventional bomb, but because it was designed to solve a problem that had frustrated air power for decades. How do you destroy something that was never meant to be reached on a satellite map? Iran appears covered with mountains. The Zagros Range stretches across the country like a natural fortress. To most people, they are geography. To military engineers, they are armor for years. Iran transformed those mountains into something entirely different. Not scenery infrastructure, missile depots disappeared beneath rock. Command bunkers vanished into hillsides. Underground roads connected facilities invisible from space. Even critical nuclear infrastructure migrated beneath hundreds of feet of stone. The deeper the construction became, the more secure Iran believed it was. That wasn't paranoia. It was strategy, because Iran had spent decades studying one particular war. In Faye, American aircraft dismantled much of Iraq's military infrastructure with extraordinary precision. Airfields, communication centers, radar stations, supply depots. The lesson many people remember is that American air power was overwhelming. But here's the problem. That wasn't the lesson Iran learned. Iran reached a completely different conclusion. Surface military power had become vulnerable. So the future had to be underground. That realization shaped billions of dollars in military investment. Every new bunker wasn't simply concrete. It was insurance against American precision strike capability. Every meter deeper represented survival. Or so they believed. Imagine standing inside one of these facilities. The doors weigh hundreds of tons. Ventilation systems disappear into narrow shafts. Electric cables snake through reinforced corridors. Far above, layers of granite absorb sunlight. Nothing inside feels temporary. Everything is designed to outlast war itself. That is exactly the point. The bunker wasn't built to survive one attack. It was built to convince an enemy not to attack at all. The real weapon wasn't concrete. It was deterrence. If Washington believed these facilities couldn't be destroyed, perhaps Washington wouldn't try. That calculation influenced every future decision. Until technology caught up. The part most people miss is this. A bunker buster doesn't defeat concrete through explosive power alone. It defeats it through patience. Unlike a conventional bomb that releases its energy immediately upon impact, a penetrating weapon refuses to explode. Not yet. First, it keeps moving. Its hardened steel body converts enormous kinetic energy into forward momentum. Rock, concrete, steel, layer after layer. Only after reaching its intended depth does the fuse activate. The explosion happens where the structure is weakest. Inside, that changes everything. Because the strongest bunker in the world becomes something unexpected. A pressure chamber. Look at a cross-section drawing of Fordo from above. There is almost nothing remarkable, a few entrances, roads winding toward the mountains, but slice the mountain open. Now the picture changes completely. Long tunnels, centrifuge halls, ventilation shafts, power systems, redundant command rooms. The mountain isn't hiding one building, it is hiding an entire industrial ecosystem. Which raises another question. If everything important is underground, what actually keeps it alive? The answer isn't buried, it is on the surface. Electricity, ventilation, access roads, fiber, optic communication, fuel deliveries, personnel rotations. The deeper the bunker became, the more dependent it became on systems outside it. That is one of modern warfare's quiet ironies. Depth reduces one vulnerability, it creates another. Strategically, this matters far more than the weapon itself, because military infrastructure is never just concrete. It is a network. Break enough pieces of that network, and even an untouched bunker begins losing value. By the early phase, American planners had spent years preparing for precisely this challenge. Stealth bombers, precision navigation, penetrating munitions, persistent satellite surveillance, signals intelligence, cyber capabilities. None of these systems existed independently. Together, they formed something much more powerful. A kill chain. Finding a bunker was never the difficult part. Understanding exactly what was happening inside it, that became the decisive advantage. Every truck entering, every power fluctuation, every communication burst, every leadership movement, invisible patterns slowly emerged. The battlefield was becoming transparent, at least from above. Then came the strikes. Bombers crossed continents, refueling aircraft quietly supported missions few people ever witnessed. Far below, hardened facilities built over decades suddenly faced weapons designed specifically for them. The explosions themselves were dramatic, but the deeper story wasn't, because these missions weren't simply demonstrations of destructive power. They were demonstrations of confidence. Confidence that intelligence was accurate. Confidence that timing was correct. Confidence that the target mattered enough to justify using one of the world's rarest conventional weapons. And that raises a far more interesting question. Why spend enormous resources attacking something underground, unless the underground itself had become the battlefield? Everyone watching saw explosions beneath mountains. Everyone talked about bunker busters. Everyone debated whether specific facilities survived. But here is the contradiction. The visible destruction may not have been the primary objective. The real objective may have been changing how every future adversary thinks. Because once one supposedly invulnerable bunker becomes vulnerable, every bunker in the world suddenly looks different. And that is where this story truly begins. Everyone thinks this battle is about destroying bunkers. But the real battle is about destroying certainty. That changes everything. Because the GBU is not merely a bomb, it is a message. And messages travel much farther than explosions. Picture a command bunker deep beneath a mountain. Large digital maps cover the walls. Air defense officers monitor radar feeds. Communications officers relay reports from missile units scattered across the country. Nothing above ground can be seen, yet every decision being made depends on what is happening on the surface. Electricity is flowing. Fiber optic cables remain intact. Satellite communications are functioning. Fresh intelligence continues arriving. The bunker appears isolated. In reality, it is completely connected. That is the invisible battlefield. The bunker never fought alone. It fought as part of a system, and systems have weak points. The lesson here is simple. Modern wars are rarely won by destroying everything. They are won by making critical systems stop working together. A missile launcher without communications becomes isolated. An air defense battery without updated radar data becomes slower. A command center without trusted information becomes cautious. The weapon may survive. Its effectiveness may not. That is why military planners increasingly focus less on individual targets and more on relationships between targets. Now shift the camera thousands inside the operations center of a stealth bomber. The mission does not begin. When the bomb is released, it begins weeks earlier. Satellite imagery, signals intelligence, cyber monitoring, electronic surveillance, human intelligence. Every source contributes another small piece of the puzzle. No single report identifies the target. The pattern does. That may be the greatest transformation in modern warfare. Information is becoming the first weapon. Bombs simply finish the process. But here is the problem. Finding underground facilities is becoming easier. Destroying them is only half the challenge. Understanding what matters inside them is far more difficult. Imagine striking a bunker that has already been evacuated. The structure collapses. The headlines celebrate. Yet the command staff relocated hours earlier. Tactically successful, strategically incomplete. This is why intelligence has become inseparable from precision strike. Accuracy is no longer measured in meters. It is measured in timing. Look again at the mountains. For decades, they represented protection. Now they represent uncertainty. Not because every bunker can be destroyed, but because nobody knows which bunker can no longer be trusted. That psychological shift matters enormously. Deterrence depends on confidence. Once confidence begins to erode, every future decision changes. Commanders hesitate. Resources disperse. Leadership relocates more frequently. Communications become more cautious. Even without another strike, pressure continues to grow. Now widen the camera again. The Persian Gulf commercial tankers move through narrow shipping lanes. Insurance companies monitor risk. Energy traders watch every military announcement. Oil prices react long before ships are ever damaged. This is where military power meets economics. The Strait of Hormuz has never been valuable simply because ships pass through it. It is valuable because uncertainty passes through it. A small disruption can influence markets across continents. A rumor can move billions of dollars. A single military decision near one coastline can reshape calculations in Europe, Asia, and North America. Within hours, the battlefield extends far beyond the blast zone. This changes everything, because underground infrastructure was never only about surviving bombs. It was about protecting leverage. Nuclear facilities represented bargaining power. Missile depots represented deterrence. Command bunkers represented continuity. Together, they supported a larger political strategy. Once those foundations appear less certain, diplomatic calculations begin changing as well. The conversation is no longer only military, it becomes geopolitical. Strategically, this raises an uncomfortable question for every major military. If hardened facilities are becoming more vulnerable, what replaces them? Do nations dig deeper? Do they build more dispersed networks? Do they rely on mobility instead of permanence? Or do they invest in deception instead of protection? Already, military planners around the world appear to be moving toward distributed operations, smaller command nodes, mobile launchers, rapid relocation, decoys, autonomous systems. The fortress may not disappear. It may simply stop being the center of the strategy. Now imagine another mountain, not in Iran, somewhere else. Another nation, another tunnel complex, another leadership bunker. Inside engineers are studying every available image from recent strikes, not because they are interested in Iran, because they are interested in themselves. Every military observes someone else's war as preparation for its own. History shows this repeatedly. The Gulf War reshaped Iran's doctrine. Recent underground strike campaigns may now reshape someone else's military innovation spreads. So does military adaptation. The part most people miss is that every new capability creates a new competition. Penetrating weapons improve. Protective construction evolves. Sensors become more capable. Camouflage improves. Artificial intelligence accelerates target analysis. Electronic warfare complicates navigation. One side develops greater penetration, the other develops greater deception. Neither side remains still. Modern warfare is an endless cycle of adaptation, not final victory. I think the biggest lesson here is not about one bomb. It is about one assumption. For decades, depth represented security. Today, depth still provides protection, but protection alone may no longer guarantee strategic confidence. That distinction matters, because military advantage increasingly depends less on where something is hidden, and more on whether an opponent understands the entire system supporting it. The bunker is no longer the whole story, the network is. So perhaps the most important image is not the explosion beneath the desert. It is the satellite quietly passing overhead, the analyst comparing thousands of images, the engineer redesigning tomorrow's bunker, the commander wondering whether yesterday's doctrine still applies. Those moments will shape the next generation of warfare far more than any single detonation, because wars are ultimately contests of adaptation, not engineering alone, not firepower alone, not technology alone. The side that learns faster changes the battlefield. The question is no longer whether underground facilities can survive modern precision weapons. The real question is whether any fixed military advantage can survive an era where intelligence, precision, and global connectivity evolve faster than defensive doctrine. And that debate is only beginning. Faye, what do you think? Will future wars still be decided by bigger and more powerful weapons, or by whichever side can adapt its systems, doctrine, and decision-making faster than its opponent?